and welcome to Zgermanguy Reviews. I'm Zgermanguy. A while back I did a review of the movie The Kangaroo Chronicles. So if you need a more detailed explanation as to what is going on here, watch that video first. Long story short, the German author Marc-Uwe Kling did a series of polemic left-wing political comedy books, where he and the talking kangaroo met all kinds of people. And they have a bunch of strawman arguments. Now, obviously a polemic is not intended to be very introspective, but every conversation in these books goes the exact same way. Kangaroo and friend meet a person, they get talking about a certain subject, Kangaroo says something, opponent is oh so baffled by the sheer brilliance of the argument that he can only say, Then there are some comedic side bits thrown in and they move to the next target. And the entire time they are so smug about it. Granted, they are self-aware enough to notice that they are, but that doesn't change the fact that they are. A master of the Socratic dialogue, Marc-Uwe Kling is not. What pisses me off though is that many consider these books to be groundbreaking in their wisdom. Wow, is the bar really set that low? Anyway, the reason why I bring this up is because today's film deals about a subject that this movie can and possibly will feel really smug and superior about. Conspiracy theories. But I haven't seen it yet, so maybe this film has something more interesting to say than just look at the peasants. So strap in, boys and girls. This is the Kangaroo Conspiracy. We begin the movie with a fake out. Before the actual story begins, we get a trailer for the movie Knights vs. Dinosaurs. And I was screwed over double here, because I did check the internet if there actually was a movie like that being made, and found that there was a book of the same name. So naturally I got all excited, only to find out seconds later it was a joke after all. But the book is real. Watch who you're messing with, movie, or else I might call you a dummy-dumb in the comment section. You have no idea about the power I have. We really begin the movie by seeing nothing. The reason being, Marc-Uwe, his neighbor Maria he has a crush on, and the kangaroo are in a dark restaurant. The kangaroo, as usual, being there uninvited. Being a troublemaker, the little communist turns on the light, which gets them thrown out and banned from the establishment. On his way home after this disaster of an evening, the author remarks how his life often feels like a sitcom, and so it turns into just that. With hilarious jokes. When will people finally realize that sitcoms are just unfunny pieces of trash that have primed their audience to laugh at anything so long as they play their little laugh track? Now if you excuse me, I have to play a little bit Super Mario on my emulator. Can I be honest with you for a moment? I'm doing this so that I can escape reality. I'm over 30 now. I don't have any direction in my life. Like my brother's married, my cousin is getting a baby, everybody is moving on, and I'm just sitting here doing stupid internet videos. Like, I fear that someday I'm going to lay on my deathbed and look back on a meaningless life and Why am I here? What the fuck? The kangaroo reminds his body that during the date, his neighbor mentioned that her mother, after her father's death, really got into the conspiracy theory that climate change is not real. So he makes her a bet. If he manages to make her mom come back to reality, she will have to go on a second date with him. But it's not like as if they have nothing to lose. Oh no. Maria says if she wins, then she will get their nice big apartment with cheap rent. On their way, their animal friend has a fight with one of those I'm a statue actors. Okay, I guess the joke here is that the political left is notoriously bad at making itself look appealing to broader society. Not to mention the constant infighting, the gatekeeping, the political correctness that borders on religious fanaticism, the apologia for autocratic regimes. Basically, the left is this picture. Mark Uwe quickly learns that this is going to be Mission Impossible on steroids. Not only is Maria's mother a follower of this movement, she is a leader. The duo begins their arguments with a few bangers. For example, the fact that big corporations like ExxonMobil already did research about climate change decades ago, concluding that, yes, it is real, starting a misinformation campaign to hide the truth. So, actually, it's those that deny the reality of climate change who are the sheeple. And because human beings are rational creatures that can admit that they are wrong when presented with evidence, everybody changes their mind and the movie ends right then and there. Zgermanguy out and auf Wiedersehen. They are being booed out of the conference and try another approach, inviting the lady to dinner. Now we hear some counter-arguments, such as all news media is bought and paid for, and everyone who disagrees with her only blindly accepts what they are being told. When Mark points out that she seems to build up mental walls whenever there's an objection to her worldview, she responds with, "Everybody does that." You know, to be perfectly honest, sometimes I wake up myself in the morning 100% sure that there are no conspiracies, and then in the evening I am down to 0.5. I have an on and off switch with these things. Basically, there are days when it goes down in my head like this. Of course they put chemicals in our water to make us docile. But then how can anybody distrust the government? Of course they use the virus as an excuse to take away all of our freedom. But then why were they returned when it ended? Of course the government did 9/11. Of course the government did 9/11.
Well, if you don't believe me because my theories are crackpot, and if you don't believe authority because they have too much incentive to lie to you, then I guess all you've really done is eliminate any possible source of reliable information that you can use to construct your foundational understanding of the reality that you live in.
Once again, their conversation goes nowhere, so they go to the bar to drown their sorrows. Suddenly, Maria's old boyfriend, who was in prison, shows up and everybody loves him. Uwe, being jealous and generally frustrated with everything, sarcastically remarks that he is such a great guy, someone who left his wife and kid alone. Everybody is horrified and angry, because it turns out he was in a North Korean prison for trying to free dissidents. Well, since I'm screwed anyway. Maria's old boyfriend plans to marry her, but he doesn't want to make things go too fast, so he will wait for a while. Meaning, Mark Uwe will have to speed things up on his end if he wants to actually get a shot. Meanwhile, on the truest of all true news channels, the conspiracy community is suspicious.
Other breaking news. Water. Wet.
The appearance of the kangaroo at one of the events got them wondering, is he an informant? Is he a secret agent? In other news, the biggest gathering of tinfoil hats in the world is about to start, the Cocon. Missed opportunity to call it the Cuckoo Con. Maria's mother will be a speaker there, so Mark Uwe has one last idea. The mother, called Lisbeth, needs to convince them, so they join her on her way, but not after making one last attempt to reason with her. If it should turn out in years to come that climate change is not a real thing, so what? We wouldn't be dependent on dictators' oil anymore. We could actually breathe the air around us for once, and Regardless of the existence or non-existence of climate change, the green transition needs to happen anyway because oil, gas and coal are all finite resources, and when they're gone, they're gone. The Cocoon takes place in the city of Bielefeld, which, if you are not a German, is a very funny thing, because there's a very famous joke conspiracy theory that Bielefeld doesn't exist, which also caused a lot of confusion in the movement itself. Are we infiltrated already? Liesel and the two guys take the plane and then taxi to the convention. It costs extra and using her own car would have been cheaper, but she has to own the lips. I paid over 2,000 euros for something nobody is going to notice. Who looks stupid now? Jesus Christ, if they would find out just recently that radioactivity was dangerous, you would have people filming themselves snorting uranium. At the airport, there's a random security check, to which the Kangaroo replies, "Oh yeah, random in the sense that I'm not randomly looking like a white European." Well, I am not saying that racial profiling works, or that I'm happy that it exists, but you don't see many plane attacks these days, don't you? Also, if there ever is a terrorist attack going to happen on this country, you know how the perpetrators look like. You know. You know. Also, wonderful Denglish.
Please put the bottle on the band.
The two agents of chaos, being who they are, cause a lot of turmoil, getting them separated from Lisbeth, and getting them put in front of our good old friend the judge, who is very hangry. Thankfully, Maria's old boyfriend shows up, being a multi-talent, who knows everyone, saving them from a prison sentence, and giving them his car so they can go to the convention. Meanwhile, the Brain Force crowd found a new target. Apparently, kangaroos have been pulling the strings since the dawn of humanity. Which of course is absolutely ridiculous, as we all know the real conspirators are the kangaroos' long-standing rivals, the koalas.
Even though we koalas are seen as useless, we're actually guardians observing the world perched from high above. In every realm and every dimension there must be a koala man.
The kangaroo finds a few drug cookies and has a vision about a dark mirrorverse where everyone they know is hardcore right-wing, including themselves. And then they crash into a police car, which has Lisbeth inside. She had her own adventure in the meantime, ending up here. Later they run into some Roman larpers. Because the commander is too much focused on explaining his character for like 10 minutes, they don't notice how they are being surrounded by some wild Germanians. Oh, that is not part of the LARP. We actually do have barbarians running around in the forest, so you should read your hiking maps very carefully. They get between the two fighting parties and, "Hey, Kangaroo, why are you fighting for the Roman Empire?" Oh yeah, I forgot. Because the West always bad. Therefore I'm going to side with the actual imperialist invaders. Being left-wing is like having this big great chocolate bar, but then you drop it into a huge pile of cow dung. After hours and hours of walking, they eventually arrive at the Cocoon and mingle a bit with the crowd. First stop, the information booth of the Reichsbürger, citizens of the Reich. People who don't recognize the German state as legitimate and want to return to a time long, long ago.
Grin, grin, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more.
So yeah, the whole event is a great freak parade. From glasses that make you see the lizard people, puts a whole new meaning on the word snake's oil salesman. 2 magic stones, actual dangerous medical advice, and true believers. It's all here. The thing that is so fascinating about conspiracy theories is that there's no universally agreed upon narrative. There are like 15 different organizations who rule the world in secret at the same time. Is it like the same as with divorced parents? Illuminati, you get Earth from Monday to Friday. And Bilderberg, you have it on weekends. But it's strange, all of these conspiracy theories are here, but not the big old classic. Hey, the idea that conspiracy theories are all anti-Semitic at their core is a very harmful stereotype. only most of them blame the Jews. Most. And I have to admit, I kind of want to go to an event like this now, just to experience what it's like to live in the superstitious medieval times. Also, this great moment. Lisbeth for the first time begins to have doubts when she sees that someone copied her idea of a cube-formed Earth that she mentioned as a joke in an earlier scene. Things then turn ugly when the crowd wants to publicly execute a kangaroo, but Lisbeth intervenes and invokes the ancient right of a duel by rock, paper and scissors. That is a version of the game where they can pick anything that comes to mind and they argue afterwards which is more powerful. They are not victorious and Mark-Uwe wants to make it double or nothing. If he loses, they can not only kill the kangaroo, he is also gonna kill himself, so that there are no legal ramifications for the crowd. Surprisingly, they lose and then just run away. One of those instances where you ask yourself, why has no one ever done it this way before? Lisbeth trips and they get surrounded, but then the G7 or Soros or whoever it is this week sends them help in the form of chemtrails. The kangaroo punches the conspiracy anchorman all the way to next month, and Lisbeth finally realizes that she was part of a very dangerous cult. Maria happy and confused at the same time that the lefty duo actually managed what they promised, to give her her mother back. We see Maria and the author on the promised date, and this would be a perfectly fine moment to end the film. But of course, this is the unlucky magnet Mark-Uwe we are talking about here, which is why we get a hard cut to the wedding of Maria and her old boyfriend. I mean, she did promise him a second chance and she kept it. There was no mention of ever continuing anything beyond that point. The movie really ends with our two clowns wanting to go home, but then they end up on the movie set to the sequel of Knights vs. Dinosaurs, Samurai vs. Dinosaurs.
I don't need it. I don't need it. I definitely don't need it. I 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 need it!
And that was the Kangaroo conspiracy. And I got simultaneously more than I expected and less than I expected. Let me explain. The good things first. The jokes are very funny and thank goodness it isn't as dickish and douchey as it could have been. It depicts the conspiracy theory news media exactly the way it deserves, as a bunch of reprehensible criminals preying upon mentally vulnerable people. We don't go into too much detail about Lisbeth's development and what led her to become this way, but you can put the pieces together pretty easy on your own. Now the bad. The movie is very unfocused. Things like the section with the hallucinations don't add anything to the story and the film as a whole. And the film has a lot of those moments. My biggest complaint though is that unfortunately what I feared this movie would do did happen. And ironically it's what this movie is about. It's not helpful in winning people over. We do get a small glimpse into Lisbeth's thinking. Her husband died and needed someone, anyone, to give her the feeling that she is needed. But the rest of the conspiracy crowd is only supposed to be laughed at. Sure, most of these theories are just plain insane, yada yada, but conspiracy theorists are always depicted as caricatures. Even with Lisbeth, we are meant to infer on our own what she feels. And this is my problem with most of the time when conspiracy theorists are depicted in media. These people, first of all, need help. But second, we should try to understand them. And not just that, but in a way that actually takes them seriously. Not as in taking their beliefs serious, but their emotional drive. In newspaper articles, journalists always lament the loss of trust in all institutions, the rise and rise of populism. Well, what do you expect? It is phrased in such a way as if institutions have a birthright to our trust. Trust is not given, it's earned. And if millions upon millions of people start to believe in alternative explanations, then that's a symptom of a system that's not working. If politicians and media use and abuse the truth, they don't have to act surprised when all truth dies eventually. When people feel that the only thing they can trust is their own instinct, then that's your fault. Because I get it. I get the emotional appeal, the impetus that drives the conspiratorial headspace. It's easy to point fingers and just say they are crazy and stupid, but how can you say that if problems only keep piling up? I get why you just want to throw your hands in the air and just scream, they might as well be lizards. They may as well not only be useless, they may as well actively trying to bring about our destruction. I get it. People start to believe in conspiracies because they feel powerless, because major decisions about their lives are being made behind closed doors. People feel as if democracy is run by a small elite because, to a certain extent, it's true. We were promised that all the economic decisions that were made decades ago, that globalization would bring prosperity to all of mankind. Well, where is it? We are all still waiting while inequality gets worse and worse, and yet every year I hear the same old garbage on international events like Davos, like endlessly broken records. If you really wanted to change the world, you would just do it. I'm Zgermanguy, and keep your third eye open.